My name is Calçado. I'm Director of Product Engineering at DigitalOcean, and I'm here with Stefano from Marley to talk about a little bit about how Marley operates and builds the software and the platform. So Stefano, welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to introduce yourself a bit further?
Sure. I'm Stefano. I come from Italy, from Venice, the beautiful city of Venice. I'm here in Berlin for 3 years. And I work for Marley for more than 2 years and a half. I started as a developer, software developer. Then I moved on with a role as a team lead. And then very recently I stepped up as a head of software engineering. And that's about it. I mean, on my day job, I take care of the teams. I try to coordinate the teams, try to help my team leads growing and help other team members grow. And yeah, that's what I do.
And that's great. So having lived in Berlin myself, I'm very used to Marley, but for our more international audience, what you guys up to? What's the gist of the company? And if you can give us some numbers to show the size of the operation you guys have.
Yeah, so Marley is a meal kit company. We are a subscription business. So you can subscribe and then every week receive a box full of ingredients to cook your own recipes at home. We have a culinary team that actually develops a different set of recipes every week, and you can freely decide how many recipes you want. If you want to skip a week, if you want to pause, if you want to resume, you can decide when you are on holiday. And yeah, you get the box at home. The ingredients are market fresh because we work with local producers. And yeah, I mean, it's a way to reduce food waste and to bring back something of high quality back to the people, to let them enjoy cooking.
That's awesome. It sounds like you have a kind of a very interesting business model where you have the back office side getting from vendors and then how you repackage and prepare the recipes and send to consumers. So how do you model your engineering teams to fulfill this kind of two-sided company?
So actually, our teams are shaped around user flows. To some extent, we have currently 4 teams. 3 teams are product teams. They are related to the product itself, and 1 team it takes care of the platform, of the infrastructure. And we can talk about it later because it's a bit peculiar. The other 3 teams, we shape them around the user flows. So we have a team that takes care of customers that are willing to join, so new customers. We call it the acquisition team because it's focused mostly on marketing, also provide some data insights for marketing, provide the best experience for new customers, shorten the subscription flow, and so on. Then we have a team that's actually focuses on the recurring customers, so customers that are with us for some time. So it's the team that takes care of the functionality like editing your order, pausing your subscription, skipping a delivery, changing your address, changing the time you want your box at home. And then the 3rd team actually takes care of what we could call the back office, in the sense that we do run our own production centers. We have warehouses all across the world, and we build tools also for the people that actually make the boxes. So we have a tool that tracks how many orders needs to be done, when, where, in which warehouse. We help them organize the batches because we work a lot with shippers, and we work with, let's say, last minute. Like we try to be just in time because of course the food is fresh and we want to keep it as like that. So this team takes care of all these production related issues.
Right. And how do you organize these teams? Do you have kind of more end-to-end teams with maybe product managers, designers, engineers in the same group, or you have kind of isolated teams depending on the skill set or area of expertise?
So it's actually the interesting thing about Marley is that the situation is always changing. We are very proud of the fact that we believe in owning the process and changing process and structure as we see fit. So that's to say that when we started, we had an engineering team and a product team. Then at some point, we realized that the communication structure wasn't working well enough for us to be productive and effective. enough. So we actually put the product managers inside the teams. Then at some point we figured out that also the relationship with the designers wasn't good enough. And so we put the designers inside the team as well. So for a certain period of time, we had teams that were, let's say, fully functional from that point of view. And then now, since we are growing a lot, the team is growing, the product manager team is growing a bit more slowly, and we have different needs. Like we are focusing more on product managers aligning with the rest of the business rather than with engineers, because the relationship with engineers is really good right now. We moved the product team outside of the teams again, so they are their own team, because we want them to also work as a team and not just be disconnected.
Yep.
And then we are orienting them more toward the business departments. So we have assigned specific product managers to specific departments, and then internally the team shuffles the work toward the engineering team.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a situation that can change every time, because it really depends on where we see the problems.
And going a bit more down the technology side of things, what's kind of your stack and architecture right now? Or maybe if you want to talk about how you evolved throughout.
Well, actually, let me answer the last part of your question, because I think it's also really interesting. Speaking about engineers, so we do believe that the main goal of an engineer, the main role of an engineer is not writing code, but is actually running the system, right? So we are trying to build a team where people don't feel responsible just for a small bit, but we want to build a team where people feel responsible for the whole architecture. And in order to do this, we believe that people need to know how the system works. They need to have a feeling of how the whole system is working. So from that point of view, we don't silo the teams related to technology, for example. Actually, we use a Kanban workflow. It's based on Kanban, and since it's based on Kanban, every time somebody runs out of work, they are free to pick new work from the backlog. And the product managers basically just manage this backlog. They just prioritize things all the time in this backlog, which means that whoever is free should pick stuff from the top, because that's the most important thing to do, right? And this doesn't play well with people that are very technology oriented, very specific technology oriented. So we don't have this clear distinction between backend and front end developers. No, we do have people that are more skilled in backend or in front end, but we try to broaden their scope of action all the time. So from that point of view, we try to help each other a lot, because we believe that's the best way to grow.
Yeah. Are you able to do that on mobile apps as well? You focus more on
mobile apps. It's a bit of a problem, to be honest. It's not that easy, because it's a very different kind of technology, different kind of mindset. But what we saw is that, for example, we don't have a QA team. We don't have dedicated QA engineers. We do, like, the developers do their own QA. So from that point of view, there is a lot of interaction inside the team, because we have the retention team contains both backend, front-end developers and mobile developers. And while not everyone can help code-wise writing the code, but they help a lot each other with code reviews and deployments, for example. So there are a lot of backend or front-end developers that help with reviews and deployments of mobile code, and the other way around as well.
Right.
Plus, there are mobile developers that are actually interested in learning more about Ruby, about backend, front-end technologies, and so on. Yeah.
So yeah, back to the stack question. Like you mentioned Ruby. There's obviously, like so many consumer tech startup, you probably have a lot of focus on mobile. What other technologies and kind of big pieces do you have in your architecture?
So mainly we are a Ruby-based company. We have used mainly Rails for our our web apps. We use Rails. We have a couple of projects that are pure Ruby, because they are projects for background processing. We started them in Ruby. We are considering maybe switching to a different technology. Then, of course, front end, there isn't much choice, right? We are currently in the process of upgrading a bit the stack because we were using Backbone as a library and CoffeeScript as a language because that's what was coming out with default Rails 4. Now we are slowly moving toward ES6 and probably also React because we see a lot of traction outside and inside the team as well. So we would like to give it a try. And we hope that will also help us improve our relationship with designers, for example.
Right.
Yeah. Then stack-wise, we have a small tool written in Go, a command line tool for our Kanban board because we wrote our own Kanban board because we like to have a tool that can evolve with the process. And we wrote a very little command line tool in Go so that we can just create tickets, move tickets around from the command line. So for developers, it's like great. Yeah,
that sounds fun. Does that integrate with Slack or some messaging app?
We do actually. We do like this whole thing can actually. So Kanban basically is divided in stages, and then we don't do classical agile estimation, but we do estimations very rough based on t-shirt sizes. We do estimations to get the team aligned on the size of a story, and then you can just say I'm starting this card from the command line, and then that thing automatically posts on Slack and say I'm estimating this card, can you help me?
That sounds cool. Do you so you have a couple of different teams and you have Rails code bases. Is that one code base per team, or do you have one code base that everybody kind of contributes to?
It's a bit of a mixture. So we have different projects. So we don't work monorepo like other companies do. So we have different projects. There are some projects that are being touched by a specific team. I would say right now there is one project in particular that is probably only touched by the systems team, and all the rest, the other Rails applications are, apart from the APIs, probably touched by the other two teams. So there is a bit of distinction, but it's not in our head to build the code base separated by team. So we would like the people to be able to contribute wherever. Then, of course, the more we scale, the more we have to face the problem of keeping all the knowledge in your head. So probably we are trying to build contracts around different subsystems. But ideally, it's we would like people to be able to contribute wherever it's needed.
And your flow is it a pull request based flow?
Yes.
Do you find that do you have any kind of challenges in terms of have multiple different teams contribute the same code base? If I make a pull request to something on this side of the system, I need to find somebody who also understands that part of the system to review. So maybe people are not super sure about that, or not confident enough to review that part of the code. Or were you able to apply this kind of collective code ownership throughout, and everybody's reasonably comfortable reviewing any part of the code?
So there are moments when somebody doesn't feel confident, but the great thing about our team is that we really have this culture of helping each other. So nobody feels ashamed of saying, hey, I really want to review this pull request, but I'm afraid I don't have the knowledge about this part of the system. Can somebody help me, sit down with me, explain me how it was done? And usually it's the author of the pull request that actually says, okay, I'm gonna help you. So it's we always keep in mind this idea of sharing the knowledge, let everyone grow. So for us, it's really important that even if somebody doesn't feel confident about a specific part of the code base, there is somebody to help there. But it doesn't happen that often. For example, also, if we consider the possibility of conflicts, even if we have a shared code base, we generally don't have many conflicts because, in the end, it all boils down to communication, right? So communication and planning most usually. So we really focus a lot on communication and communication among product managers to understand how to plan possibly epics, plan in a way that doesn't create conflict with the rest of the other teams.
Right. And what's your, maybe you have different flows with them, but what you consider to be the most ideal that you have right now path to production? From I'm writing some piece of code in my machine to it's live. What are the steps that an engineer would usually follow to get there?
So if we ignore the part that involves product managers, right? So the planning.
Now let's ignore the product managers.
Let's say we have just a story that's ready to be worked on. and you run out of work. You go in our GitHub project. We have a GitHub project where we organize the features per product, and you just pick the story that's on top of the icebox, and you just bring it in a common board. Then the first thing you do is you estimate the story. You try to gauge how big is the story, how much effort it's gonna take. Then once you have your own idea, you communicate this idea to the team, and the team will either agree or ask questions. Why did you decide on this size? I thought it was this other size. And that's very helpful to align the team to understand what are the challenges for a specific story. Then you basically pick the story, move it to the next column in the common board, and work on the code. Then when it's done, you announce that it's done. There is a phase of code review. And then when the code review is done, which is based on a consensus, very loose consensus model, somebody else is going to pick that card, because one rule we have is that you can't test your own code. Mm-hmm. So somebody else is going to pick that card, move it to staging. We have a staging environment, perform all the tests. Hopefully the product managers also wrote a test plan for that or some test cases. We'll test the story, and once the story is ready, we'll move it to production.
Right. And that's, so I'm developing code locally. I'm testing against probably a local database I might have on my computer.
Yeah.
You might have some data seed that people use to create that. Then I push to, I believe you would be using GitHub for that. So you push to GitHub, merge against master, and then do deploy to staging. Is it like a Capistrano deployment?
Yes, we use Capistrano.
Right. So you do like Capistrano deployment specific to staging.
Yeah.
You test it. Then when it's time to move, you Capistrano deploy against to production.
Yeah.
And then when it's in production, do you have any kind of smoke test or anything that tells you, like, how do you know that you didn't break production?
We actually, we test everything again in production.
Right.
Yeah, it's still manual. We don't have any kind of integration test, automated integration test right now. It's in the pipeline, but we don't have it. But so far, it's working kind of well, I would say. Like, people will test again in production, probably sometimes even more in depth than staging.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's like kind of reasonably new technology company. We always pressure to go for velocity, right? Like we need to get time to market is often the most important thing, which usually means that it's going to be a reasonable amount of incidents that happen in production, and all companies are like that. If somebody says they're super stable, either they're not doing anything or they're lying. So what's when actually something went wrong, either bad deployment or you learn on Twitter that one server was down and whatever happened. How is your culture on incident management and prevention, even post-mortem, this kind of thing? How do you all go about that?
So when it comes to infrastructure, actually, so far we have been very, very stable. Probably also thanks to DigitalOcean. We had only one issue, but usually when it comes to incident management, the way we approach the problem is safety first. And I forgot the second. But anyway, I'll explain a bit how it works. First of all, we try not to do things that may put us in a risk. For example, we have Friday deploy freezes. We recently introduced a rule not to deploy after 5:30 in the afternoon. So we try just not to put ourselves in bad situations that might cause problems. We try to plan ahead. That was the second point. Plan ahead a bit in the sense that, for example, platform-wise, I think the only potential issue we had was when DigitalOcean needed to do maintenance on our master database. But luckily, we got informed enough in advance that we basically just plan ahead and migrated the database to a new instance, and that was totally fine. Was it
a MySQL thing where you migrate?
Well, actually, we use Postgres. It wasn't that easy, so we use Postgres. So we basically set up normal hot standby Postgres replication. And then at the time we didn't finish, but we took our time to introduce PG Bouncer both on application servers and in front of the database.
Right.
And that allowed us to basically just pause the connection, reroute them, and then resume the connection without any sort of downtime.
That's great.
Then when it comes to incidents, because yes, it happens, even though usually it's they happen because of bad code, like bugs in the code that are critical, that are blockers, and we need to fix stuff. If it's during the day, we have a pretty straightforward policy that is whenever somebody shouts and figure out something is broken, it's usually a product decision, but the rule is you revert the code. So the first thing to do is get to a safe point. So we usually revert the code. Then if we feel like the issue is not super critical but can wait maybe 5 minutes, we talk with product managers and we decide if do we want to revert, or maybe we just put on a not fix so that the feature is still live but we fix it right away.
So it's kind of a decision between, is this an incident or it's a bug?
Yeah. Right. Because in the end, I mean, it all boils down, is this thing affecting the customers? Is it affecting our teammates in other departments? Are we blocking someone, or is it just not optimal and we can fix it right away? No? Most of the times we revert, sometimes we also fix bugs. Then when it comes to the weekend, we actually we don't have an on-call policy in the sense that everyone is on call.
Right.
Because as I said, for us, the most important thing is running the platform. Developers, engineers need to feel the ownership of the platform. And honestly, I think that everyone being on call, not having the ball passed down to someone else, also lets you think a bit more about the code you're writing, and also about the decision you are taking when it comes to deployments, for example.
Right.
Because if it's Friday evening and you know that if something goes wrong because you are deploying a feature that might impact what the people in our production centers are doing on Saturday, you think it twice if then you have to wake up on Saturday and fix it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's next in terms of technology for you all? What are the things that you're looking at that you think could be not only shiny new toys, but actually could make a difference for your workflow and productivity?
Yeah. So we are looking, as I said, we can start from the front end. We are looking into React because we feel like we are not productive enough when it comes to touching the front end code base. So React, we think we could help also new people joining. It could help us avoid taking, it's a bit of a bad way of putting it, but I would say avoiding taking certain architectural decisions. It doesn't mean we don't want to take architectural decisions, but having a bit of a more solid and straightforward way of designing.
You don't need to decide everything, right?
Yeah,
some of the
free some of the brain power to take other architectural
like
decisions.
The commodity architecture is already decided by the framework.
Then also had the relationship with the designers. We are still talking and implementing a living style guide to componentize everything and change everything at the same time, like each component changed across the whole board in one shot. Then when it comes to the backend, we are actually implementing, we implemented a Kafka cluster, and we have some consumers already. We are replicating some data between the main user-facing application and the application that takes care of helps the production centers. So we have a sort of ETL step, if you want to call it like that. And that's probably the area where we are going to focus the most, because there are a lot of things, a lot of opportunities we see there in terms of improvements of stuff we already have, moving it to Kafka for third-party integration.
So it's like whenever there's a state change, it gets serialized or some shape.
We actually listen, we use a tool called Bottled Water, which is a connector for Postgres that uses the write-ahead logs of Postgres and streams database events.
Right, it sounds like the exact LinkedIn architecture for Kafka from the beginning. Although I believe it was Oracle and MySQL that they had back then. Yeah, that's super interesting. Are you all doing anything around containers? Is this something that's on the radar?
Well, we started implementing something with Docker, because since we implemented this Kafka cluster, Kafka is not the easiest tool to handle in development, and people do need it. Like if they have to write the consumer's project, they need a Kafka cluster running, right? So for that, we felt a sort of immediate need, so we started to use Docker for that. But actually, it's something we are talking for about a year, I think. That is, we would like to maybe have an integration project, and we see Docker being a great fit for that, for example, no? Where you could just decide on the architecture, your local architecture you want to spin up, the kind of branches you want to run, and have Docker do it in a quick way. Potentially, we could also have something to do with Docker in production. I think it's a bit far away in time, but I mean, we have the interesting part is that since we are a weekly subscription business, we do have very precise spikes in load, no?
Right.
So, for example, every week we have to create orders for all the countries. Different point in times, but still, if you look at the graphs, there are still spikes. And for example, Docker would help there because then we could just reshape the workload and have scale the machines based on the workload.
And how do you go about local development? Are you using Vagrant or something else to set up, or you do manually set up your machine for local development?
Well, for now it's just local because in the end, if we keep like all the pieces independently, they don't have many dependencies. They can. It's pretty easy. We all use OS X, so it's also easy to install certain dependencies. For example, we use Beanstalk as a job queue. Probably if you were using Windows, that would have been a bit hard to manage a dependency, but we was actually just use Homebrew and install it very easily. But eventually we would like to move everything to Docker. We are using Vagrant when it comes to infrastructural changes, but it's showing its limits right now. It's getting harder and harder to bootstrap a machine. If you want to bootstrap maybe 2 or 3 machines, then it becomes a bit complicated on a single laptop. So yeah, probably Docker is the choice for that as well.
Okay. So Stefano, to wrap up, as an engineering leader, if you are either like starting from scratch or I know your next iteration of what you are doing, what are things you do differently on a second iteration?
For a start, I would focus more on this broader knowledge. You know, I believe that engineers of the future won't be able to focus on a single language, a single technology anymore. They will need to be able to adapt. You know. Second of all, I will put even more focus on communication. Like code is the easy part, is the last part, writing code. What's hard is actually make people talk to each other and let them figure out where the problems are. And also focus on their growth. You know, like I know we have to run a business, there are requirements, there is the market demanding, there are probably investors, but that comes naturally, you know, like the pressure from that side comes naturally because of natural reasons called money, right? And that's why I will rather keep focusing more on people and their growth path, because sometimes it happens that the business falls a bit short from that point of view. Yeah,
that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This fascinating story how you able to shape your teams is such an interesting business model, very different from your typical startup that only has maybe the customer facing side without the complexity of the warehouses and things like that. Yeah, thanks for your time, and see you next time.
Yeah, thanks to you. It was a nice talk.